YouTube channel, September 11th anniversary to 9/11. But I have to react to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk was their biggest threat to their democracy. And this is why the title in the click is Charlie Kirk shot, marked out by the Democrats. And 6 months ago, I watched an interview between Charlie Kirk and Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom, the way he was acting, like I said, I'm not like throwing nobody under the bus, but I got to let you know in terms of the temperature and the tone of individuals, it's top down. So if our elected officials are talking negative and talking hate, and we're going to stop Trump, and we're going to fight, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and when they go low, we kick them, and all of this stuff. And then when these things happen, there has to be some form of accountability, because America, a house divided cannot stand. It just cannot. But what happened was sick. Okay. I saw it with my own eyes. I was not ready for it. I got a few text messages. Somebody texts, they shot Trump homeboy. Somebody else texts, they shot, Trump's guy got shot. So I immediately went to the internet. Good morning to you. I immediately went to the internet, and I didn't understand. And then just like this person, Alex, is in, the chat right now, and he put that in there. And this is just showing us how we're dealing with, some sick individuals, because, why would Alex do that? And then you have to ask yourself, why would an individual just shoot another person, like regardless of what the situation is. Now, I understand self-defense. I understand all of that. But to go out and to seek out and to shoot somebody in a public realm, it is crazy. So, Alex, go ahead and log off. Today is not the day. Today is not the day. So what type of human beings are we dealing with? And this is why, like for myself, I refuse to choose a side when it comes to Republican or Democrat. I refuse to choose a side. Okay. Lifelong Democrat, left the party when they started, adding the alphabet coalition and all of that. I wrote in Jesus Christ for president. And, as a black man, it's like we're in between, the two rivaling tribes. And sometimes, we get the collateral damage. And this was uncalled for. And I guess the message that the Democrats are sending us, because this was a political assassination. Okay, this was a political assassination. So the message that the Democrats are sending us is that if we can't beat you, we will shoot you. If we can't beat you, we will destroy you. If we can't beat you, we will arrest you, shame your name, put out content and put out negativity in the, the meta world or the universe, over the internet and all of that. So this is like, this is not cool. This is not cool. And I'm sure when you saw it for the first time, the internet, did not filter any of these things. I'm hoping that, they're basically starting to, take some of the content down, or some of the stuff, or at least put a trigger warning or something. Because when I basically logged onto my laptop and I was watching it, somebody text me personally and said that, Trump's homeboy got shot. And then I went on the internet, and before I can actually see what really happened, I saw Charlie Kirk, Turning Point, speaking at a live event. So I started watching the live event. So apparently I was watching it on delay, and I'm watching it. And when they ask those particular questions, how many transgenders, committed mass shootings? And I believe it's 9. But his answer was a quick response, and that's what he does. That's his style. And he said, too many. Put the mic down. and the crowd kind of cheered because it's a liberal arts college in Utah, Mormon town, very conservative, in a red state. So, just like with the blue states, well, the blue cities, that's having all these issues in the world today. I'm knowing right now somebody's on the back end saying, yeah, in a red state. Okay. And I'm sitting back and I'm just watching. And then they ask the next question. So how many mass shootings have been committed in the last 10 years? And he said, do you want me to include or am I including gang violence? Another, quick wit response. That's what he does. And then the shot. And I'm sitting there like what? Are you serious? And then the crowd responded and I'm sitting back and I'm like, oh my God, this is this is not cool. And when I say that he was marked out by the Democrats, meaning he was their biggest threat to their democracy. I watched a podcast a few months ago with Gavin Newsom, and he literally destroyed Gavin Newsom, destroyed him. And Gavin Newsom was having a conversation, talking to him and saying, yeah, you're the next guy. Yeah, you're the guy, like marking him out. You're the guy. And he's like, no, I got to give the president some credibility. No, it's you. It's you. So just imagine if, an organization, your boss basically says that, the company's not doing well. And then we have an individual, another company or corporation that's a major threat to our existence. And, I don't know why he's still around, See, when it comes top down, they have soldiers, just like in a gang. Okay. And what I'm learning is that politics is the gangs. Okay. These young YNs is running around shooting people on the street level, but they're running around shooting people on the highest of the highest levels. And it is sickening. It's sickening because this is the climate that has been created by the Democratic Party. And I'm throwing them under the bus because every day I look at these Democrats and they're speaking hate. Okay. You can't be mad at a culture of people who have biblical beliefs. You can't be mad at a culture of people who have a different moral turpitude than you. You can't be mad at a different set of people who, want the world to be the way that it was 10 years, 20 years, 100 years ago. You can't be mad at individuals that is not buying into the progressiveness. And what Charlie Kirk has done, like most of us, have figured out that they're trying to create some different type of ecosystem to where you have a chosen few controlling all of the masses. But some individuals love God. Some individuals respect the fact that, the XY, the XX chromosome. Some individuals do not support, born males playing, female sports. Some of us do not support, men lying with man as they lie with, with a woman. It's in the book of Leviticus. We're not judging you, but when you have an entire party, the Democratic Party, that's promoting an agenda that's pushing us so far away from God, so far away from humanity, and so far away from love, this is what happens. So when you talk about the chickens coming home to roost, and you guys have been rocking with me, and I appreciate y'all. And we've been talking about the chickens coming home to roost from a political perspective, but now we see what they have to do to preserve their power. And it's democratic. Didn't know MAGA do this. Didn't know young YN do this. Didn't know black do this. This is somebody that did this. That's a part of an operation that wanted to kill President Trump. Now, look, if it wasn't for that teleprompter when Trump turned his head, we would have watched Donald Trump have the same fate live on television that Charlie Kirk did. And somebody emailed me and said that the only live rally the only live rally that CNN showed with President Donald Trump was the one in Pennsylvania, because they were going to be the one to break the news. And it's sad and it's sickening that you have human beings that would have applauded the fact that another human being was shot live on television. And it's sad because you have individuals that are happy that Charlie Kirk got shot. Who are these people? This is why we as human beings, have to really understand that a house divided cannot stand. So this cannot be a situation like, that's going to help the party. The party has to we have to demonize the party. The party has to, understand that they created this atmosphere. The Democratic Party has to understand that this is, a climate that they created, because when you have the Jasmine Crockett's of the world, when you have, the Barack Obamas of the world, when you have the Gavin Newsoms of the world, and then you have these, the Brandon Johnsons of the world, who wants to go against the federal government, who wants to go against the Constitution to preserve or to do some things, okay, that is anti-American. Why are we fighting the federal government from bringing in troops into Chicago to stop the killing of human beings? It's not about ICE. It's bigger than that, because all of the shootings, all of the murders, all of the homicides, and all of the things that goes on in the world, we have to understand that life is very important and life is vital. So why are we fighting the federal government? Why is Gavin Newsom going on record? We got to stop Trump. And, and then Karen Bass is saying the same thing, and Jasmine Crockett, and, they hate. So if it's coming from the top, what do you expect the soldiers to do? Answer that question. If it comes from the top, what do you expect the soldiers to do? Like I said, if we had a briefing, if we was in the Army and our general said, listen, we got some bad actors out there, gentlemen, and they want to destroy us, but we got to go out there and destroy them. And that's all I'm going to say, and walk away. You will have individuals out there that will be strategically doing whatever they need to do to appease the top. So the Democrats are applauding behind closed doors because this is what they wanted. How do you think you could create an atmosphere or able so bad, so divisive, so divided that this is not going to happen? Look at history. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and 5 days later, he was shot by the Democrats. Think about that. He was shot by the Democrats. John F. Kennedy was the biggest threat to their democracy. He was shot. We still don't know who did it. The Communist Party, the Republicans, we don't know, but we do know that John F. Kennedy was going to change the face of the Democratic Party, because his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, was a Dixiecratic Southerner. And once they assassinated John Kennedy, they put Lyndon B. Johnson, and what did he say? He went on record and said, I'll have those Negroes voting Democratic for the next 200 years. He called in the Negro leaders. He signed the so-called Civil Rights Acts. And in 1965, he signed the Voting Rights Acts, and then it stopped right there. And we all know that in 1967, Dr. King was fighting and going against the 90 of Congress for not passing meaningful legislation. And we know this. In 1967, the Trump administration just basically declassified the documents. I've read it with my own eyes. Dr. King was going to lobby Congress for $20 billion for the next 20 years for the Negroes and the poor whites. And it was an anti-poverty campaign, and it was called the Poor People's Party. And what did the Democrats do to him? They shot him. Okay. Fast forward to the 80s. Ronald Reagan, the president, Republican Ronald Reagan, the president of the United States. This is when we had all the affirmative actions in. This is when, they had to have quota and had to hire blacks, and all of these things was going on, and black growth took off and skyrocketed. But some entity somewhere decided, Ronald Reagan is supporting the poor, the working class, and more importantly, Ronald Reagan is supporting the black community because he's allowing this to happen, and there's growth under his administration. And what happened to Ronald Reagan? They shot him. Yes, the Democrats shot him. And then after they shot Ronald Reagan, what did he do? Took away the affirmative actions. All of them. What did Ronald Reagan do after that? He went on to start working with the Democrats and the Iran-Contra scandal, where he basically said he don't recall, flooded the black community with drugs and crack and all of that. And what happened? Think about it. And the reason they didn't shoot Bill Clinton is because Bill Clinton was down with it. So it was basically you get down to lay down. So Bill Clinton, he rocked with it. So he's basically, they're still protecting him. You know, with the Epstein files, the females had a press conference this past weekend and implicated Bill Clinton as being on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein with the underage females. But nobody's talking about that. The media got us talking about a signature that could be cut and paste, especially in this day in AI. But that's neither here nor there. So Bill Clinton, what he did was he got with his homeboy Joe Biden and his wife Hillary Clinton and went on a campaign and showed the Democratic Party, we're not helping nobody. We're going to keep this thing going. We're going to lock these people up with 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you out. Joe Biden, he basically pushed that bill in the Senate and it passed the Senate 64 to 6. And only people that did not vote for it was 6 Republicans. And even Al Gore voted for it. And he basically is the vice president, usually have to be the deciding vote. But he wanted to get some of that because that was one of the last times that Congress was unified. And that was to lock people up that looked just like me. And it started the era of mass incarceration, which crime does pay. Now you can see why the Democrats in Chicago and the Democrats in all the the top 25 worst cities in America in these red states that happen to have these blue cities, because crime pays. They want crime. And the only way this thing continue is if that they continue to assassinate and kill the opposition. Okay. So when you look at Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton called us super predators, said we needed to be brought to heel, heel like dogs, went on record and said that. Okay, so think about the black Democrats that associates themselves with the party. Would you call them a sellout? Would you call them coons and Uncle Toms? Because they are allowing these things to happen to their people. And this is why they seek out individuals that's a part of the Divine Nine, meaning the Greek system, because they took an oath to basically look out for certain families here in the United States in this white supremacy. And that's a fact. So we are in a time right now where we really got to understand as people. And then you have individuals, that I want to put on blast, because when I started this live, somebody put, fag in a comment, F-A-G, and I'm saying his name was Alex. And I'm sitting back saying these are the individuals that needs to be called out. Because somehow, some way, they get pat on the back for doing these things. Whoever the shooter was, he got a bag. He was sent. They didn't send no transgender. They sent a professional. They didn't send a rookie, that missed Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump didn't turn his head in Pennsylvania, this is what they wanted. You got Democrats on record, that want him to die. Tim Walz, the failed governor of Minnesota who was the vice president. He said when he check his phone and he wake up in the morning, he responds and he basically says, is Donald Trump dead yet? And they love that. So what type of sick and cynical human beings are we dealing with? And this is why we got to separate ourselves from these people. And this is why we got to put these people on blast. This is why we got to have a conversation. This is not right. I don't care how much of an issue you have with an individual. This is not how you handle your problem. Because like I said, he got marked out when he did that podcast with Gavin Newsom. He sat there, he looked presidential. And I'm talking about, Kirk, Charlie Kirk. He looked presidential. Any question Gavin brought up, he destroyed him. He had Gavin Newsom changing the subject, changing the topic, talking about we don't even talk about it. But Gavin Newsom sat right there and he asked him, and I watched it this morning just so I could be on point. He basically asked the guy, so how many times do you talk to the president? He said, what do you say, Governor? How many times you talk to the president? About 2 or 3 times a month, 2 or 3 times a week. And he said, so you're telling the president? He was like, no. I'm giving the president, you got to give the president kudos. I'm running an operation on a college level, but yeah, you're the guy. Just imagine the evildoers that want to do something to somebody. They listening to a shot caller from the top, the governor of California. That's a shot caller. It's top down. It's top down. And when I say it's top down, it's top down. So they're calling these shots from the top, motivating and encouraging individuals that's associated with their party to go out and do things that we just saw. And it is crazy because this is what they wanted us to see live in color with President Trump getting shot. Ain't no MAGA doing this. There ain't no gangbangers. Gangbangers, they don't know how to shoot like this. Okay, was a orchestrated hit. And it came from the top, and assassins' bullets changed the trajectory of history. When Abraham Lincoln got assassinated, it changed the trajectory of history. We don't know what happens to the Freedmen's Bank. The Freedmen's Bank was put together to give funds and loans to the newly freed slaves. But what happened? They put Otis Howard as the commissioner, but when they assassinated him, they gave him the black college, which is Howard University. Assassin's bullet. When JFK got assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson became the president, and instead of putting in, meaningful legislation, they set us up with the Civil Rights Act, which included everything under the sun, and it was hijacked. And the individuals that bought onto that Civil Rights Act is the individuals on the Democratic side that's going against ICE, that's trying to turn your sons into girls, that's doing all of this stuff, this progressive agenda. They are there today. And the black man is sitting back, not knowing what to do. And I'm saying just stand, but don't associate with the party. This is what I've been saying since 2016, since Obama, because I voted for Obama. I sold T-shirts. I was pushing for the guy. But when, after 8 years and what he did for the LGBTQ elemental P, what he did for the Indians, what he did for all these other cultures outside of the black community that put him in office, that's when I said, okay, the jig is up. And it's sad that we got to talk about this on the anniversary of 9/11. Sad. So this is like I said, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Anybody that's associated with this party, shame on you. And it's sad because if you are an elected official, if you go on record speaking hate and we got to stop Trump, we got to do this and going against the federal government, your hands are dirty. The entire Democratic Party, your hands are dirty. Blood is on your hands, because I'm seeing talking points saying that, we're going to have congressional hearings and meetings today to tone down the rhetoric to stop okay. So if you're going to have a meeting to tone down the rhetoric, then you know how to tone it up. And you guys have toned it up to a level that is beyond repair. And what you did is that you sacrificed your political party, because the party will never be the same again. Because anybody that believes in God, anybody that loves themselves, anybody that has a heart cannot condone something like this. It just cannot happen. It cannot happen. And we sit here as human beings in the United States of America, but somehow they sit back and talk about, Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. No, Charlie Kirk was a threat to your democracy. A very successful conservative young man. He started Turning Point at 18 years old, 31 years old, going on a college tour, the first leg of the college tour. There's not a Democrat right now that can actually go on any college tour right now, because they have no influence and they have, no support. And that's real. That's real. Thank you. That's real. And this is sad. This is sad. And we cannot condone this. We're going to have to be honest with ourselves. This can't, like I said, this can't be, normal. This cannot be normalized. It's coming from the top. And I'm going to be paying attention real close to these elected officials. If they continue to speak with this rhetoric, it is what it is. This is sad. It's not right. And like I said, he was marked out by Gavin Newsom when they did that podcast. Gavin Newsom sat there, man, and I watched it. He was like, "You're the guy. It's you. You got the youth. Even my son's like you." And he was talking to him, and he's like, no, Governor, and he like, "Man, how many times you talked to Donald Trump?" And he said, "Come on, tell me." He said, "I'm not." He said, "How many times you talked to Donald Trump?" And then Charlie Kirk said, about 2-3 times a week. "So what have you told him to do? What's the next thing you're going to tell him to do? Because whatever you tell him to do is working." And this is what and I'm quoting Gavin Newsom having a conversation with Charlie Kirk doing a podcast when he got destroyed. And Charlie Kirk basically, told the truth that the Democratic Party has no agenda. The Democratic Party has no leadership. The Democratic Party has no pathway forward. So when they say the biggest threat to their democracy is Donald Trump, Charlie Kirk was their biggest threat because he galvanized the youth. Because the president, he shut down the DEI, he shut down the wokeness, he signed executive action for just male and female. They talk about the transgender sports and all of that stuff. So basically, what the Democratic Party have evolved to was being erased. Because what they should have did was cut a deal with Black America and show some respect. And then we would work with the Republican Party from a bipartisan perspective and work on meaningful legislation, because the world has to be different. The world has to change. And the only way that it does not change is if we continue to allow them to do what they do. And it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. I shouldn't have seen that with my own eyes. Can you imagine the college students, the trauma that they're going through? Can you imagine that? Sitting on the front row. Just imagine, Charlie Kirk's coming tomorrow. Turning point to be here. Hey, I'm gonna skip my classes and I'm gonna basically sit up front so I can have a front row seat because I got some question to ask him. And next thing you know, you see his neck shooting out like some wicked horror film. And it was actually real. And for me, like I said, it's trauma for me. Okay. And I watched it on a laptop. I actually was forced to watch it live. I got a couple texts and I went to turn on the internet and I saw Charlie Kirk speaking live at at Utah Valley University. And I'm sitting back there, that's ultra conservative. Okay. It's Mormon town. Okay. And I could see why they wasn't expecting anything to happen like that. And then next thing they ask him a question. And he just being the man that he is, they ask him a question. How many transgender shootings have been orchestrated? How many mass shootings been orchestrated by transgenders? And the answer is 9. I was expecting him to answer, but he basically said too many. Boom, put the mic down. And they laughed. The crowd kind of gestured. And then they asked another question. And it was kind of like, to me, a trigger. He asked a question, how many mass shootings have we had in the last 10 years? And he said, are we including gang violence? And boom. So I guarantee you that the person of interest that they had to be the individual that was asking the question. Because there were multiple questions, but why did the shots ring out talking about gun violence? So the individual that was asked the question, he would still be in custody if I had anything to do with it. I'm going to interrogate him. I'm going to look up his phones. Okay. Because I'm saying, are you working with somebody? And was this the signal call to shoot at this particular time? Because his last words was, is that including gang violence? Da! I'm sitting back like, oh my God, what have we just witnessed? And then it hit me like, dang, this is what they wanted us to see happen to the president. So they couldn't get the president. So they got the young gun. And I'm talking about an individual that was changing, the lives of college kids, giving them a narrative and giving them a conversation outside of the wokeness, outside of the Rainbow Coalition, outside of the way far left. Because just because you are raised with, a certain way does not mean you're supposed to hate your brother or your sister. You shouldn't have to, force us to, deal with your pronouns. You shouldn't have to force us to deal with what you're going through. We got enough what we're going through in this world. And then you want to add these extra things, to the political realm, and then add, black, ignorant, females, and put them in Congress and have them acting all stupid with no integrity, no respect, and then sit back and, want to be podcasters instead of politicians. They want clicks, they want to go viral. So they say the wildest things. But this thing was top down, man. It was top down. So when you got the governor, Gavin Newsom, talking about we're going to stop Trump, and then you got the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, whatever his name is, we're going to stop Trump, and, they talking crap about him. And then you got the mayor having press conferences, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson having press conferences talking about, we're going to fight ICE and motivating the youngsters to basically to be the ops to the federal government, but not tell them about all the resources that the federal government got. Y'all need to stop. We had a Latino over here in California with ICE call out the gangs, 18th Street. What's up? You got the ICE in your hood and you're not standing up. I'm sitting back saying, wait a minute. Are you telling the gang members to go against the federal government as an elected official? And I'm sitting back saying, wow, this is so crazy. This is crazy. And individuals who say that the situation with Trump was fake, that person just missed. Okay, so now knock that off. That person just missed. It was catch up. No. This is real. Okay, but this time they made sure they got the right shooter. He didn't miss, but Charlie Kirk was sitting there still. He wasn't moving around like Trump, looking at the, trying to see the monitor and all of that stuff. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. And then you have individuals who, their job is just to be, ignorant. Their job is just to be, a-holes. Their job is just to be, they say things. That means, they don't love themselves. They're sick. I mean, anybody that loves themselves is not going to go out and kill another person just because. Anybody that loves themselves is not going to say anything in the chat. It's not going to be disrespectful. It's not going to do anything wrong. They're going to stay on point if you love yourself. So we're dealing with a bunch of people who do not love themselves, and I blame it on human error. Obviously, they failed somewhere. Obviously, they was violated somewhere. Obviously, they was hurt somewhere. So hurt people hurt people. You see how Will Smith, when he slapped Chris Rock? So you got a lot of individuals out there that's been violated. Okay. And they're mad that, another individual may not have been violated. You got individuals out there that have a broken home, or, the parents are on drugs or something. But then you have individuals who was raised, in a beautiful community with, conservative, with 2-parent household, and, the median income is above the national average. But then you have some other people, instead of going to get it, instead of learning, instead of working hard, instead of creating some form of success, you got individuals who want to basically target, shoot at individuals that basically found their own way, found their own lane, and doing what they want to do, or doing, what motivates them. That man started that, turning point at 18 years old. He created a situation for his family. That man has a wife and children just because his views are different. Now, nobody say debating, you can't out debate an individual who sticks to the facts, because when you stick to the facts and the truth, you're going to lose that debate. Okay. Because the winner does not go to the person who speaks the loudest. That's how two ignorant people, get out. Just like if you look at two pigs in a pigsty, you don't know which one is the one, because you got two people just slopping around and you don't know which one is the good pig or not. And usually when you get into pig's pen, it's not good at all. So this is like not cool. And it comes from the top, and every Democrat, elected official your hands are dirty. You motivated this. You created the ecosystem. You created the climate and the history. And the history basically shows, and it goes back to Abraham Lincoln assassination. It goes back to, JFK assassination. It goes back to Dr. King, Malcolm X assassination. And then when they shot Reagan and he didn't die, Reagan basically flipped and basically took all the affirmative actions, let the drugs come in, and, it is what it is. Bill Clinton, he didn't press the line or go against the orders of the evildoers that run him and the Democratic Party. He basically, doubled down, signed the 94 crime bill, which created mass incarceration, which is another form of slavery. We're 6% of the world's population, but 40% of the world's prisoners are behind bars because we created an ecosystem for this to happen. Because if we can create this ecosystem, we could change it back. So this is why, I was loving the conservative movement. I was loving, as a nonpartisan independent, but the youngsters, the college kids, having an opportunity to learn and, have debate and to see what's right and what's wrong. Because in the last election, people under 30 voted for Trump. It was wild. And I'm sitting back looking at Charlie Kirk aligning himself up to be the next guy. And Gavin Newsom, like I said in that podcast, marked him out. You're the guy. Yeah, you're the one. My sons love you. Yeah. How many times you talk to Donald Trump? Tell me. What's the next plan? What did you tell him the next thing to do? This is what he was saying to Charlie Kirk. And then you have the shot caller at the top, Gavin Newsom, saying this. And then you have the soldiers on the street level saying, okay, we got work to do, gentlemen. Gavin Newsom is basically giving us our orders based on the rhetoric. So will the rhetoric continue? Because the rhetoric will get individuals killed. I'm not saying the word unalive. They killed that man. They assassinated that man on camera. And I'm sure right now behind closed doors, they're celebrating. And that lets you know that we're dealing with some sick people. And these are our elected officials and our politicians. That's sick. So will we continue to allow the world to be so divided? I say not. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, if you are a Democrat, leave the party. And I'm not saying join the Republican Party. I'm a nonpartisan independent. And a nonpartisan independent, basically, from a metaphoric perspective, is the judge in the courtroom. You have the prosecutor, you have the defendant. So the judge is the mediator between either side. And Republicans or Democrats it could be the prosecutor or the public defender or the defense team. But the judge basically sets the rules, sets the tone, and mediates between the two rivaling tribes. And this is what we need to do. And we got the Constitution. Okay, because I know, the MAGA movement is going to get stronger. And they're going to look at the Democrats like, whoa, if y'all can't beat us, y'all shoot us. So now when there's some type of reaction, then what? So this is not right. So since I got a large volume of you people on, I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of the podcast that Charlie Kirk was on with Gavin Newsom. And I believe that this was the time where they realized, like, listen, Trump is not our biggest threat. Because they always say Trump is a threat to our democracy, and their democracy is them being in power. It was actually Charlie Kirk. But I'm going to go ahead and play this clip because I feel like I'm talking in circles, and I'm just affected by what happened, and it's not right. So I'm going to play this podcast, and you guys tell me what happened. Let's go.
You're making a deeper argument that we're not, and you didn't say it in a maligning way, but that we're just not capable because we're not hardwired.
Well, I think it's two things.
To be able to participate in
Well,
this.
I think that it's two things. Number one, your upbringing in college campuses does not foster debate like it used to. It just doesn't. It's that it's about silencing the critic and the elevation of the victim. So you do not have the practice of robust having to defend your position. It's very monolithic. It's very centralized.
Schooling
It's
him.
very top down. It's
Schooling him.
authoritarian. And then secondly, I would just say that the philosophy on the worldview, as I mentioned earlier, that you guys have adopted is that thou which is oppressed will get the most points. You guys don't have thou that has the best idea wins.
Schooling him. And Gavin Newsom is the governor sitting there like, wow, getting schooled by this young 31-year-old.
And because of that, you guys have an elevation of like, hey, we're just going to have a small.
This is 6 things you're looking for when you.
Sorry about that. He's monetized. He's getting commercial ads.
Set of a minoritarian, hectoring, hall monitor assistant principal vibe of people telling you that you're not allowed. It's about.
So I want y'all to listen to what he said. Okay, and I have to stop it because of, the copyright situation. But I want y'all to listen to what he said in terms of how the Democratic Party is basically falling off a cliff beyond, they can't come back from this. Just listen to what he's saying and just think about what happened to him yesterday. Think about it. This is the guy breaking it down that the Democratic Party is over. It's not our grandparents' party. It's not our great grandparents' party. It's a party that's on its last legs and have no pathway forward. This is what he's telling Gavin Newsom to his face, who has a plan to run for president.
Silencing the critic and the elevation of the victim. So you do not have the practice of robust having to defend your position. It's very monolithic. It's very centralized.
Look at the face. He's sitting back saying, wow, he's right. He knows he's right, but doesn't matter, okay, to these people. Just being in power and winning by any means necessary, even if they got to shoot somebody, in plain sight, in public, in front of a whole bunch of college kids. Sickening.
It's very top down. It's quasi-authoritarian. And then secondly, I would just say that the philosophy on the worldview, as I mentioned earlier, that you guys have adopted is that thou which is oppressed will get the most points. You guys don't have thou that has the best idea wins.
You see what he said? Those who have the most rhetoric, not who has the best ideas.
And because of that, you guys have an elevation of like, hey, we're just going to have a small subset of a minoritarian.
A small subset.
Hectoring, hall monitor assistant principal vibe of people telling you that you're not allowed to say these words and you can't say that.
Wow. And I agree with him wholeheartedly.
Which in and of itself is hyper-authoritarian. So if you seek to understand why young men are rebelling, it's like, no, I'm not going to go along with this anymore. Like maybe I'm going to say, for an example, maybe I'm going to send out a stupid tweet when I'm 17 years old. When I'm 26, I shouldn't have to get fired because of that, right?
100%. I've never liked this can't go. I mean, I remember back when I was a lieutenant governor, I think Bill Maher was trying to get on the UC campus or something. They were saying Bill Maher was too conservative voice, and we called that out at the time. It completely insane. But it's equally insane that people are boycotting Bud Light. I mean, how is that not called out?
I don't drink, but yeah, I mean, like
you don't drink at all.
I mean, no.
By the way, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You don't? Never have?
I have, yeah. A couple years
What
ago.
happened? What, a couple of years ago you stopped?
I stopped, yeah.
Why'd you stop?
Call this
I
deflection.
wanted to be more successful.
I love that. What were you drinking?
Napa Valley wine.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Here we go. Right? Are we going to get a
using
little...
my Lord and
Yeah, he so deflected on that one. But you guys get my point. And this is why I say that Gavin Newsom marked him out. Because like I said, there's a situation on this podcast where he basically told Charlie Kirk that you're the guy. And Charlie Kirk says, well, we got to give the president some credit. Say, no, you're the guy. It's you marking him out, top down, marking him out. And then he sat back with a sinister look on his face and said, so how many times you talk to the president a day? He said, no, I don't talk to him every day. So how many times you talk to him a week? He said, 2-3 times a week. And then Gavin Newsom said, so what are you going to tell him to do next? He said, what? What are you going to tell him to do next? Come on, tell me. And I'm sitting back saying like, wow, this is crazy. This is crazy. So, man, listen, y'all, I appreciate you. Listen, I could go on and on and on. I appreciate, put, the super chat, put somebody threw some little funds in there, man. I appreciate y'all. But this is not right. And as human beings, we're going to have to hold these individuals accountable. And at this point in time, the persons of interest that they had in custody, They let them go, and they are basically. There was a press conference before I started this podcast that they are seeking the help of ring cameras and all of these things. They basically found the weapon in the woods. They know they tracked him from the roof, jumped off the roof, and went through the neighborhood. So the FBI's on it. So it is what it is. So rest in peace. Charlie Kirk, and like I said, all lives matter. So anybody that's losing their lives, I mean, it's not cool, whether it's on the streets in the hood or, on a level like this. So you got to understand, the government is the biggest gangs, because every YN in Chicago that's murdering people, they're Democrats. I don't know no black gangbangers that associate themselves with the Republican Party. So those are their young YNs belong to the Democratic Party. Believe that, because right now the top dogs, the shot callers, put out a hit and did something on a whole nother level, and this is not cool. So with that being said, man, you guys have an amazing day. It's your man Bouchon Glover signing out. Better Black America TV on YouTube, Better Black America Radio Show. You guys have a great day. Peace out.